friends, our series of great Theosophists, this series started several weeks ago with our presentation of Ammonius, who I passed out details about Ammonius, starting the Neoplatonic school in about the year 193 AD. As is indicated in the handout, and those who are watching on YouTube can shoot us a mail at www.ultdc.org, and we'd be happy to send you a copy of the handout. It details the situation going on at that time in this age of Kali Yuga, the Dark Ages. As the first speaker was talking about, Theosophy has always been with us. It goes underground from time to time as situations overwrite, if you will, the message that it's giving out. Today we're in this age of materialism. We're all very focused on the material side of us, our bodies, etc. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. And also the church came in about the year 100 or so, and we'll be getting into that. Essentially, it has made an anthropomorphic God, which is third-rate God, is often called, but we'll talk about the one, which is the theosophical definition of the all. Starting out now, the Church of Rome, and setting the stage a little bit about when Ammonius came on the scene. The Jewish Bible was saying that the sole authority upon every subject, the only revelation of God, not to be compared with the scriptures of other nations, would be the Bible. It lays Jesus out as a unique character. There were arguments and counter-arguments going on about that time as to whether the world was flat. The church definitely established that it was flat in the 6th century. We think we've learned since then that it's not flat. But anyway, that's setting the stage as to what was going on there. The 2nd century of the Christian era was marked by tolerance, but not unity. The ancient wisdom of religion, Theosophy, which is the only true basis for unity, was now forgotten. It's largely forgotten today, but there are a few around the world who are trying to keep the chain unbroken. So Ammonius was raised as a Christian, and he started asking himself questions about some of the things the student was mentioning. And he started the Neoplatonic school in Alexandria in the year 193 AD. The purpose of this school, he wanted to form a nucleus of a universal brotherhood without distinction of any kind. He wanted to promote comparative religion and the study of philosophy. And he wanted to make the study of philosophy a living power in the lives of his students. He separated out the teachings between the masses, or the lesser mysteries, and those who pledged themselves to silence the greater mysteries. He did this just as those who came before him did. If we look a little bit in the history before the year 100, we saw that the Theosophists had divided their classes into 3 categories: the neophytes, the initiates, and the masters, and they approached the subject of Theosophy in a relatively deeper way among the more experienced students in Theosophy. What Orpheus delivered in hidden strategies, Pythagoras learned when he was initiated into the Orphic mysteries, and Plato next received a perfect knowledge of them from Orphic and Pythagorean writings. Orpheus is, if we look in the Bhagavad Gita and look at Arjuna, we find that that basically describes Orpheus. Orpheus comes to us from the mysteries from many generations back, even well before Pythagoras and Plato. So we were in the Neoplatonic 193 A.D. He reinitiated the work of Plato and laid this out for us. The system of Orpheus, we know by the study of the Bhagavad Gita and through our studies of Theosophy, is one of the strictest in morality. The Orphic concept of duty, one of the noblest known to mankind. It talks about emanation. It really is based on emanation, which is what we know as cycles in Theosophy as we study it today. All things having proceeded from the divine essence of the One, okay, processes through. And the second doctrine of the, I'm sorry, I kind of lost my place here. Proceeds from the divine efforts. All things must of a necessity return to it. Innumerable transmutations along the way and reincarnations and purifications are needed before the final consummation can take place. So we're talking about cycles, karma, reincarnation, these grand concepts that are often missing from today's teachings. So the philosophical system of Orpheus was revived in Egypt by Ammonius Saccas. The aim and purpose of Ammonius, again, was to reconcile all sects, peoples, and nations under one common faith, a belief in one supreme, eternal, unknown, and unnamed power which governs the universe by immutable and eternal laws. His chief objective was to extract from the various religious teachings one full and harmonious chord which would find repose in every truth-loving heart. That work is still going on today. Starting with, we're going to talk today about Plotinus, Porphyry, and if we have time, Iamblichus, but I doubt if we have time, we may need to have that in a different talk. So Ammonius Saccas, like many other great teachers, left nothing in writing, and he bound his pupils by this oath of, especially his esoteric pupils, by an oath not to divulge his most profound doctrines except to those who could be trusted not to disclose them. That is carried on, that tradition is carried on, continuous throughout history until this day. After the death of Ammonius, the work of recording the Neoplatonic teachings was taken up by his pupil Plotinus, and this is and it is to Plotinus that we owe most of our knowledge of the Neoplatonic system. The keynote of Plotinus's whole nature was summed up in the word impersonality. He was resolved not to even divulge the place of his birth, the names of his parents. We do know that he was an Egyptian, but we don't know very much at all about his early life. When somebody asked him if he would do a portrait for them, his response was, is it not enough to have to carry around this image? Must I transmit the image of this image as worthy of attention? So at the age of 28 is when we start learning about him. He was studying philosophy at that time and was looking for a teacher. And a friend of his recommended Ammonius. So he went to the school and he just declared that that's the person he was looking for. And he attended Ammonius's classes for 11 years. At which time he took off, he went to Persia and India, where he worked and studied philosophy for about 5 years. And then he went to Rome and founded a school of philosophy when he was about 50 years old. He started writing books, and he wrote 21 books between the time he was about 50 and about 59 when he met Porphyry, who was about 30 years old at that time. And by the time Plotinus left us, he was 66 at the time. He'd written 54 books, which Porphyry consolidated in what was known as the Enneads, which were translated from the Greek by Thomas Taylor and published in London 1794 to 1817, and other translations by Kenneth Sullivan Guthrie. And the words spoken by Plotinus that we'll go into are direct quotations from the works of Plotinus, which are also referred to in the Secret Doctrine. So back in 260 A.D., when Porphyry first met Plotinus, he met Plotinus through a friend, just like Plotinus had met Ammonius. And the friend Emilius agreed to take Plotinus to Porphyry to Plotinus's house. And as they are approaching the house, they hear the voices of children. So he asked Emilius, "Is Plotinus a married man?" And Emilius said, "No." "Does he operate a school for children?" "No, but he loves children." And many of the people in Rome trust their children to his care, and he very carefully taught them. So they're walked up to him in his home, and it describes his home. It's very interesting too. Plotinus rises from his seat, welcomes his guests, gives them some refreshments, and they get into the conversation. He was working with a child as they arrived, and the child went on his way about his play. Porphyry very eager to get started, but he knows Plotinus is a Neoplatonist, so he knows he has to start with universal concepts. So Porphyry says, "Well, Emilius tells me that I must gain my knowledge starting with these universal concepts," and he asks, "What is it that lies behind all manifested conditions that exist?" And Plotinus says, "Well, it's got to be simple. It's got to be a very simple process." He said, "So we will start with the one, and that's it. The one behind is above all things. There must be something simple," he said, which if it's not completely simple and not really one, it cannot be a principle. The principle of everything must therefore be one and only. So Porphyry keeps probing. He says, "Well, but the manifested universe is multiple and complex. Do you mean to tell me that the complex springs from the simple, which is the one?" And Plotinus says, "Yep. But it's not possible for the many to exist unless the one exists, from which or in which they subsist, or in short, unless there is a one which is prior to all things. The one is the first principle of things." So Porphyry probes a little bit more. He says, "How can the one be described?" Plotinus says, "How indeed do we speak of it?" So we frequently speak of the one as it today. We cannot describe the one. We can say what it is not, but we cannot say what it is. We are not prevented from possessing it, though. We cannot say what it is. So we all possess that one within us, although we frequently don't realize it these days. So we are the one. So could we speak of the one as a being? Porphyry asked. Plotinus says, "No, the one is not being, but being is the progeny of it. There is no name for it because nothing can be asserted of it." Orpheus says, he sees the point there, but he says the one is in all things, yet no one of all. The one is all because